Erev Tov, everyone, and welcome to the Maimon Beit Knesset. It is Tuesday night. It is 8 p.m. here on the east side of the United States, here in the diaspora. This, of course, is the Maimon Beit Knesset, and therefore it must be the Rabbis Discuss. And tonight we're going to be continuing our discussion about the situation in Israel and how it actually is going to affect things worldwide in the United States and other places too. Adrian, I see you in the chat room. Adrian, our good buddy Adrian, miss his broadcasts, but hope you're feeling good tonight and hope you'll find the show interesting, everyone. So without further ado, let's bring in Rabbi Ancel first.
And Shalom, everybody, and good evening.
Okay. So we have a special guest with us this evening. I should probably put your picture up there. There we go. We have a special guest with us this evening. It's the guest that we were planning on having on last week, and there was some kind of a glitch in the encoder system somewhere along the line, and the broadcast didn't go through. Shoshi, I see you. Marshall Reese, I see you. Marshall, our Sergeant at Arms, in the chat room. So, without further ado, let's bring on Rabbi Craig Wyckoff. Good evening, Rabbi.
Good evening, Rabbis. Good evening, Rabbi. Before we go on, they're having an issue. I'm getting this, I'm hearing you live and hearing it a delay. How do we get rid of this?
All right. Do you have it? Are you watching it on the on YouTube?
Yeah, I think I have your YouTube on.
Yeah, that's why, because you're hearing it delayed. There's a 12-second delay going out onto YouTube, so you're probably hearing.
Okay, so let me get rid of the YouTube.
Yeah, or you could just turn the sound off on it. So like I said, Richard, good to see you. As I said last week, we were planning on having this show. There was some kind of a glitch somewhere along the line between we were blazing fast on our end.
I'm trying to figure this out.
Everything good now?
No, hold on. Like I said, I'm trying to figure it out. Let me see.
Yeah, usually if you're hearing a loop, you're getting the broadcast coming in from somewhere.
Hold on, let me get rid of YouTube.
Okay.
Okay, now I got rid of YouTube.
Are you sure now?
Yes.
Good. Glad to hear it.
I couldn't find YouTube on the bottom of my screen because, with my vision, I'm like, okay, somewhere.
Okay, well, at least you got it. Okay, so I wanted to start out this evening the same way we started out last week. Rabbi Craig, you had a very interesting history on the so-called country of Palestine. If you'd like to go into that.
Okay, first off, let me just say Palestine was never a country. Okay, it was a geographical region. So don't call it the so-called country because it was a geographical region. It was referred to and used through the generations to refer to the Jews who lived in that area. Okay, so before Israel existed, as we know it today, there was a British mandate, but that wasn't a Palestinian state. And before the British mandate, there was the Ottoman Empire, and that existed, but that wasn't a Palestinian state. The Ottoman Empire were the Turks. Before the Ottoman Empire, there was the Mamluk Islamic State of Egypt. Again, not a Palestinian state. Before the Islamic State of Mamluk of Egypt, it was the Empire of Ayyubid. And again, that was not a Palestinian state. Before the Empire of Ayyubid existed, there was the French and Christian Kingdom of Jerusalem, not the Palestinian state. And before the Kingdom of Jerusalem, there were the empires of the Umayyad and Fatima existed, and neither of those were Palestinian states. And before the empires of Umayyad and Fatimid, there was the Byzantine Empire, and that wasn't a Palestinian state. And before the Byzantine Empire, there was the Roman Empire, and again, that was not a Palestinian state. And we're going to get back to the Roman Empire in a minute.
Okay.
Before the Roman Empire, the Hasmonean state existed, not a Palestinian state. And before the Hasmonean state, it was the Seclevid state, not a Palestinian state. Before the Seleucid Empire, it was the Empire of Alexander of Macedonian. Again, that was not a Palestinian state. And before the Empire of Alexander the Macedonian, there was the Persian Empire. And I don't think you would consider the Persian Empire a Palestinian state. And before the Persian Empire, there was the Babylonian Empire that existed. Again, not a Palestinian state. Before the Babylonian Empire, the kingdoms of Israel and Judea existed. They certainly weren't a Palestinian state. And before the kingdoms of Israel and Judea, it was the kingdom of Israel, which was definitely not a Palestinian state. And before the kingdom of Israel, there was a theocracy in the land that consisted of the 12 tribes of Israel. And they certainly weren't the Palestinian state. And before the theocracy of the 12 generations of Israel, there was an agglomeration of independent Canaan cities. So that wasn't the Palestinian state. In fact, if you go through history to the start of time, this area of land has been everything except a Palestinian state. So you say to yourself, well, where did this concept of Palestinians come to be? Well, let's go back to the Roman Empire. Under Hadrian, after the Bar Kokhba revolt, when he put down the Jews as punishment, he started referring to them as Assyria Palestina to remind them of the Philistines, okay, who had conquered the Jews. Even under King David, we never defeated them. You know, David defeated Goliath, but we were never able to defeat the Philistines. So that was his punishment, to refer to us as Assyria Palestina. And all through history, the only reference of Palestine had Jewish roots. It was referred to as the Jewish people. As a matter of fact, the first reference of any kind among Arab people was in the 1920s, because the people of that land only referred to themselves usually as Muslims, or by the regions, or like they were Assyrian, they were Syrian Muslims. They didn't refer to themselves by a certain land, a certain state. They were nomadic people.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until the 20s when any Arab people at all referred to that land as Palestine. They didn't call themselves Palestinian, but they were referring to that land as Palestine with regards to the Jews. So what, do you want to interject?
Oh, I was going to say that, if we go back to Roman and Palestina, Syria, that it actually wasn't even all of Israel.
Correct.
It was mainly from the center of Israel north. It encompassed that portion of the northern part of Israel, part of what is today Jordan, most of Syria, and all of Lebanon.
Right.
So it wasn't even, it was a region. It was a Roman, what they considered a Roman protectorate.
And if you go back to the Torah, if you look at the Abrahamic promise, that God made to Abraham, right, it still isn't fulfilled.
Right.
The territory of Israel today still does not encompass all of the area there that was promised in the Torah to Abraham.
Well, not even during the time when the 12 tribes were in the land did they have all of the land that was promised to Abraham.
Correct. It's never been fulfilled, and it's like a legacy that I guess is supposed to be fulfilled at some future date. Yeah. I don't know.
So the other thing I wanted to bring up was that the term Palestinian, let's go back and the Philistines. Okay, the Philistines weren't even a Middle East people; they were actually Greeks. They had established Gaza, that region in Gaza, as a trading port. It was Greece's roadway into the Middle East so that they could trade back and forth between Europe and the Middle East. So, saying you're Palestinian or you're related to the Philistines doesn't make any sense because they were actually Greeks.
No, if they're anything, they're Syrian, Jordanian, Lebanon, because most of the people. Right. Okay, first let me jump backwards for a minute.
Sure.
You're talking about Palestinians. Well, if anybody is sitting in front of a dictionary or can Google on the computer, Google the Arabic language and their alphabet. And I defy you to find the letter P.
It doesn't exist.
In the Arabic language, because it does
not exist.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now, Rabbi Nachman and I disagree on this. Rabbi Nachman doesn't think that he's smart enough to have come up with this. But in an interview that I read with Arafat years ago, Arafat claims that he turned the coin Palestinian for his people and his organization because he thought it would be a huge thorn in the side of Jews across the world, reminding them of their constant defeat by the Philistines century before.
Yeah, and as a matter of fact, Arafat was actually Egyptian. And he was
born in Egypt.
He was thrown out. Right. He was thrown out of Egypt because he was a troublemaker.
Well, the PLO had their starts in Egypt, and if you look at the lands where Gaza is, right,
Yeah.
and the land where the West Bank is, okay. So when the state of Israel was formed, those lands were not part of the state of Israel. They didn't become part of the state of Israel until after the 6 Day War, when we defeated Egypt, Syria, Lebanon, and Jordan, and we took those lands when they fled. And that's when those lands, the West
Right.
Bank refers to the West Bank of the Jordan River, which, was part of Jordan. But after the war, that land became part of Israel.
And
After the war,
that's
Gaza became part of Israel.
yeah, and
So,
that is within the laws, like the
of
San
war,
Remo conference and stuff like that. That says that when two belligerents are against each other, and the one who is being attacked, and they take land, they don't have to they don't have to give that land back unless the two countries make peace with each other and they work out an agreement between the two of them, and that has never happened.
correct.
It'll never happen.
No. Now, what's truly interesting, okay, we discussed this just a tiny little bit last week and then realized this, there was no show, but um, the biggest flaw so far is that Israel has allowed itself to lose a war over the last couple decades of public relations.
Exactly.
They have really had the worst public relations. And I put this to a test. You hear in LA and if you're ever on Facebook, you hear just in the newspapers of all these American Jews who support the Palestinians and who think Israel's to blame for all this, and just go on and on. And it's because if you look at the algorithms of a computer and all these websites, I went to a blank computer and I started typing things in like as if I was in support of Palestine, right?
Mm-hmm.
And pretty soon, every search I did pulled up what I would consider questionable videos, reporting, news
Yeah.
stories, supporting Palestine, showing that Israel is to blame for everything. And just like, it's like this one video came up showing a TV show to kids saying that Jews have a history of killing babies and taking their blood and using it to cook with.
The old blood
Yeah.
libel.
And I was like, oh my God, where is this being shown? And it's being shown to the children
Yep.
in Palestine on their television. And I'm like thinking, this stuff, no wonder the kids of today, no wonder Harvard and NYU and all these kids at these colleges are posting such crap because they're getting indoctrinated with lies.
But my
Lies,
question is, I have
lies.
a I have a question, Rabbi.
Yes.
These are, I'm just talking specifically Harvard. It's the number one school for law students. Hopefully, some of them will be in the government, whether it's a state or federal.
I hope not.
And they're law students. No, but I'm just saying they're law students. I mean, they're top students. They should know the difference.
You
They
would
should
think that,
know.
Rabbi Ancel, have you seen the condition of the American political system in today's
Oh,
world?
no,
Have
well,
you
that's
seen
that's the
have you
problem.
seen what passes for senators and congressmen and presidents and vice presidents? I mean, you wouldn't even make that comment if you saw if you
I
looked at
know.
what's happening.
Rabbi Craig, take a look. A few years ago, I buried the grandfather of Senator Schumer. You understand? He didn't even acknowledge me. He didn't speak to me. I mean, I was below him. And take a look, him, Schiff, and the others. They're all against Israel.
Mm.
So let me jump in here for a minute and let the people in the chat room know that, or anybody that's watching, know that if you have a question for Rabbi Ancel or Rabbi Craig or myself, put it in the chat room. We're monitoring it, and we'll try and give you an answer. Try at least.
To our best of abilities.
So
What I think
I want to
the
go
people
back to this whole term Palestinian. I know again, we talked about the Arafat coining the phrase and stuff like that. But actually, if we go back even further, back to Josephus, when he wrote the books, the Jewish Wars. And these books were actually had to be sanctioned by the government, by the Roman government, as to be able to be published. And if you look through those, if you read through those books, I mean, you have to go back to an older version. Let me clarify that right now. The version that I have is probably came out in the 1960s. But every mention of the Jews in Josephus's works refers to them and them exclusively as Palestinians.
Like I said, the first use of it between Arabs was 1920s. So
yeah. So I
that was
mean,
the very first document
the
use.
term has been around, but the term has always been used to describe Jews up until the 1920s, or till Arafat actually grabbed a hold of it.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, when I say it was used in the 1920s, it was loosely used, but it was there's the first record of it being used.
Most of the supposed Palestinians were in Jordan. It's if you read the thing about Black September, where the old man, king of Jordan,
King
Right.
Hussein of
massacred
Jordan.
20,000 of them, and he just gave them no choice. You either leave or I'm going to kill all of you.
Well, a lot of them, and the majority of those that are in Israel now claiming that we're Palestinians, they were actually refugees from Jordan, Egypt,
Yeah,
Lebanon,
that's
and Syria during the 6-Day War because they fled the country. When those countries came and attacked Israel, there was a lot of bombing going on at the borders. So they fled into Israel. After the war was over, none of those countries would take them back
Right.
nobody
under,
wants them.
under penalty of death. Israel at that time said, "You're welcome to stay. You can become Israeli citizens. We will let you have the right to vote like anyone else. You may worship as you please. You can be in our government," which is why you see so many Arabs in the Israeli army today, so many Arabs in the Israeli government. And a lot of them chose to stay as Israeli citizens. However, a lot of them did not. And those that did not, unfortunately, are the ones that now, stayed as refugees and ended up being delegated into Gaza under law after the PLO terrorist organization under Arafat started a weekly campaign of bombings, civilians, back in the 60s.
Yep.
So Israel had no other choice but, to put guards to gate the area and scrutinize who was let in and out of that area.
Okay, so Soshi in the chat room has a comment. She says, "Seems to me that the term Palestinian is just a made-up term. No historical record of any such a people. Am I correct in my assumption?" And yeah, you're absolutely correct.
Well, actually, that's not necessarily true because there was a Roman reference to Jews as Palestinians.
Right, that's true.
And
Yeah.
that was actually taken from the Torah. Oh God, I can't think of the word. Rabbi Ancel, help me.
Yeah.
There's a word that sounds like it could be translated to Palestinian in Hebrew. It's in the Torah.
Mm.
I forget where. So my mom, when I was younger, I could tell you where, but nowadays, I'm
Yeah.
I'm lucky I can remember that the story of Adam and Eve takes place at the beginning. Yeah, wasn't that in Exodus? Oh no,
No.
Genesis.
But she's
Yep.
right. Palestine that was never a country. The only president which was a phony president was Yasser Arafat. They didn't have their own monetary nothing. It's just a
So
made up word
in the Arab world, it was
in the Arab world. Yeah.
correct. Actually I wouldn't even say it's a made up word. I would say it's a
Yeah.
stolen word.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I would say
And I
that was
would
probably
say
more accurate.
And I would say it's a stolen word for this intentionally stolen for the sole practice of winning a public relations war against Israel.
Yep.
And they've been fighting a public relations war against Israel since, the formation of the state of Israel. Arabs had no interest in being a state
But no, I'm
until the
glad you
formation
said that, because if
until
we
the
look
formation
at
of the state of Israel.
what is going on in there, I mean, at the time after during the or before the British Mandate, and even part of the time of the British Mandate, we had Transjordan,
Correct.
and Transjordan had the opportunity; they could have created a Palestinian state, and they didn't. Egypt actually had control of that area for a period of time, and they had the
Egypt doesn't
opportunity
want
to create a Palestinian state, and they didn't. Nobody wanted to make a Palestinian state.
Nope. And Palestine, to be honest, in modern days was a secular way of saying Israel.
Yeah, well, actually, if you go back and you look at the flag, the Palestine flag during the British Mandate, what did it look like?
It looked like the current. Didn't it look like the current Islamic
No,
flag?
it was half blue, half white,
Oh, okay.
with a
Looks like
gold Star of David in the center of it.
Gotcha.
Correct.
So I mean, and this whole thing about we haven't been in the land and all this. There has been a Jewish presence in the land since
The beginning since Canaan.
since Kenny. There has always been a Jewish presence in there, even during the time when the Ottoman Empire was in there, when the Umayyad Empire was in there, and the Turkey and everybody else was in there. There's always been a Jewish presence, hence why we had the Hebron massacre back in the 1920s.
Yep.
And most of these other empires were people that came in and conquered us. But we didn't, even though they got rid of a lot of us, and sent us off into the world, a good portion of Jews stayed.
Yeah, well, even during the Babylonian exile.
Correct.
I mean, that's where we got the Talmud Yerushalayim, was during that period when there was actually the school was in Safed, I believe, wasn't it?
Correct.
Wait, yes.
Okay, so we had the school, we had the sages in Safed, and they were exchanging that information back and forth between Israel and Babylonia when they were writing, when the two Talmuds were actually being put together. So, I mean, this is, all fascinating, the history and all that other stuff. But, okay, so where do we go now? At this point, what's Israel's
depends.
option? What is Israel's option, and how is this going to impact politics worldwide?
Okay, so one, let's pretend, let's just look at Israel and the Arabs, okay? I look at the situation there like America, between the European settlers and the Indians. Only in this particular case, the Jews are the Indians, and the Arabs, who were basically nomadic tribes, are the European settlers. They've now decided, well, hey, the idea of a state and a permanency isn't such a bad idea. I guess I kind of understand what it is now. So now we want to take this land and make it our own state. So, in theory, if you support our right to be in America, then you kind of have to support that right of them to say, okay. But now you got to look at the safety issue of that happening. Because Israel, a nation of Jews, is surrounded by nations of Jew haters all around. And do we want another nation of Jew haters right in our backyard?
Well, and that's a point. Is that okay? We can look at it that way, but we have to also remember that all of these organizations and states have a charter. Hamas, Hezbollah, Taliban,
Correct.
Islamic Jihad, and their charter is essentially to murder
wipe out
every Jew on the face of the planet.
Correct.
Starting with Israel. We'll start in Israel, and then we'll spread out, and we'll kill every Jew in the world.
Okay, but wasn't, and again, it depends whether you're going to trust these nations or not. It's like when you ask, when people say, well, why did they choose now to attack? You have to look at the fact that Israel was in negotiations with Saudi Arabia. They were about to start this long negotiation of cooperation. And of course, this immediately stopped all talk of that.
Well, Saudi Arabia has kind of been under the covers, friendly with Israel for a very long time, for the simple fact that they're scared to death of Iran.
Right. But now they broke off those talks because of what happened. So, I believe Iran was behind all of this. And I believe that Iran said attack now because they were afraid of these talks with Israel.
Mm-hmm.
And they didn't want them to happen.
Well, not last week, but the week before, we had Gadi Edelman on.
Mm-hmm.
And do you know Gadi?
I know him through Facebook.
Okay, so Gadi's a counterterrorism expert and stuff. And he was talking that the information that they were getting back from the Israeli military, from the people who were actually being attacked and stuff, that when these people were trying to break into the homes, breaking into the safe rooms and stuff like that, they were speaking Farsi. And the only country on the planet that speaks Farsi is
Iran.
Iran. So
Well,
I said, okay, so it's either Iranian army or Iran Republican Guard that was actually participating in this thing.
Well, they weren't all Hamas, because if you looked at the videos, and there were Ethiopian-looking people there. There were, ISIS-looking people. There were people, other nationalities that you're like, okay. There was one guy that was like Black Africa. And I was like,
this attack has been planned for a couple of years. So they had time to get a lot of people from other countries. And I'm sure there was some people from Iran, like you said, and from other countries. I don't know what is going to happen.
Yeah, it's just,
we know
Iran is supplying weapons, so what's the next step? It's a proxy war, but it's just like other proxy wars. You have your people on the ground with those troops, giving them direction and information and whatever, training or whatever. So,
But also, Israel was kind of lax, you know.
oh yeah, they've actually admitted it that they were that they screwed up. Let's put it honestly. They screwed up.
Big time.
Yeah, they relied too much on the technology and not enough on eyes on the ground.
And
You know,
unfortunately,
there's
unfortunately,
nobody.
we can't forget eyes on the. I don't care how technical we get as a world. You know, there's still low tech out there.
Well, yeah, I mean that's always been the way, hasn't it?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, just to kind of take a slight detour here. Back when I was heavily working in automotive and stuff like that, with international groups and stuff, and they were talking about okay, well, Japan, everything is all automated and stuff. You go to the Honda factory where they take you to the Honda factory where it's all automated. Very few people actually working there. And when they really actually found out that you get outside of the Honda plant, everything was very labor intensive because the Japanese said a robot and technology cannot do what a human being can do.
This is even now in the higher technology because my background is in aviation. Now they have what they call it the auto landing system, but still,
You
that
have to
pilot
have
still
a
has to
person
be
in
there.
control. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean that's okay. So getting back to this, I mean yes, Israel has been very technologically advanced, and maybe too much so. And that in
But
part,
you
I
have
would say in
Mossad.
part, I
You
wouldn't say
have
that's
some of the
the
best.
whole reason, but I would say in part, that's the reason that this actually happened.
But the intel, this is what bothers me. Mossad and the rest of the security system in Israel, they're the tops in the world. What happened? Egypt says that they warned Israel 10 days before. I don't know if it's true or not, but the intel that Israel always has, Israel always gave intel to the United States.
Right, and
What
Okay,
happened to the
the
intel?
intel that was first off, the intel that was given to them was simply nothing specific,
No,
simply that it was believed
something was
that
going to happen.
something was going to happen. No dates, no time frame, no nothing. Okay.
just
Then what
basically what your grandmother could tell you when the hair on the back of her neck stands up.
Right. Basically, when you go to a fortune teller and she says, "Oh, I see some good and some bad happening in your life." Well, can
Yeah.
you be specific? It's like, well, that's all they're revealing today. It's like
Yeah,
it was one of
it's a
those
good point.
predictions.
But yeah, I
But
mean, that they said that Egypt said they sent a warning. Israel says we didn't get any warning. The United States even said no, we didn't really get anything specific.
right, but they got the same.
The whole thing is, are they telling the truth? I don't know.
Oh yeah, because I think there was
Because
they
anything
couldn't.
you see on the news or anything else, it's worth nothing. You can't even accept 10%.
Now go to it's called I-21. Do you have I-21?
I usually go to Arut Sheva. That
Oh, okay.
just
Same
yeah.
principle. Same
Yeah, I mean,
principle.
if you want to really find out what's going on, I mean, say even if I want to find out what's going on in the United States, I always go to the Israeli press
Right.
because they seem to cover the United States better than our mainstream media here, and we get much more information about. We get better information on
Kind of
Israel
sad, no?
from I-24 or from Arut Sheva.
What I like to do is watch all the information here and then call my buddy in Israel
Yeah.
and say, okay, which of this is true, which isn't true? What can you tell me?
So Marshall says Shin Bet failed also. Yeah, I think we got it.
There's
And we
three of
have
them,
we have
yeah.
Red Samson in the chat room, and Red Samson says Am Yisrael Hyde.
All right, Red.
So
Amen
we are
to that.
about at our halfway point. So we're going to go ahead and take a break. And when we come back, we're going to delve into a little more of the worldwide political ramifications of what's going on. So I'm going to turn you gentlemen down for a moment
Okay.
because I can and I have the power. So we're going to take our 6-minute break now. And when we return, we'll have more with Rabbi Ancel and Rabbi Craig Wyckoff and myself, looking a little more at the bigger picture of the whole situation in Israel. So please, everybody stay tuned.
Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat.
Delicious things to eat.
The popcorn can't be beat. The sparkling drinks are just dandy. The chocolate bars and the candy. So let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat. Let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat.
It's intermission time, folks, so hurry, hurry, hurry. Step right over to our refreshment center for the most extravagant array of refreshment goodies ever assembled under one roof. Enjoy breathtaking, mouth-watering goodies, everything from a snack to a delicious full meal. At our refreshment center, you'll find a large variety of goodies to satisfy your hunger, your thirst, or your sweet tooth. So hurry, hurry, hurry. Visit our refreshment center now. The show starts in 5 minutes. The show starts in 4 minutes. The show starts in 3 minutes. The show starts in 2 minutes. The show starts in 1 minute. And now, on with the show.
And we are back again. Our special guest is with us this evening, Rabbi Craig Wyckoff, along with our regular guest, Rabbi Ancel. And let's bring the two gentlemen back in.
We're back.
We're back.
We are back. Okay, so we got a couple of things in going into the chat room. Adrian says, but Iran has an ideology founded in the 1950s, and he gives the name of it, and I don't even want to try and pronounce it, but they want to bring back the 12th Imam by making chaos. So Iran is essentially, the Ayatollahs and stuff have been 12ers, what they call 12ers, which means that the 12th Imam went down a well and he never came back. He will come back, and he will only come back when the world is in complete chaos, and then Islam will take over the world. That's essentially, in a nutshell, I mean in a real broad nutshell, what that actually is. So they are 12ers.
Islam will never take over the world.
So I have another question here.
You know what? That's a little bit like, that's kind of interesting because that's very reminiscent of the Christians' end of the what is it?
Revelations.
Yeah, their end of days. You know, their JC guy will come back after Revelation, and all the Jews have either been killed in this great battle, or have converted to Christianity, and then they'll be the religion of the world.
Yeah, so we have Adrian's put in there that the well that we were talking about, this well that the 12th Imam went down into, is in Qom, Qom. Now we have another question here.
Qom is in Syria.
Okay, I'll take your word for it.
Yeah, you know, that city is famous for some of the best silk rugs ever produced, and they still do.
Okay,
Qom.
Okay, so let me get this question. Okay, so
my biggest question is, and it's always been, can somebody prove to me that JC ever existed? Because they can't.
Okay, well, let's not get off on that.
That's a different subject, and I agree with you. Rabbi Ancel, I'm on the same page you are.
Okay, so let's get off of that for the moment, because I have another question.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, so my sister, of all people, has texted me, said, what about the hostage stages that are being filtered out a few at a time? Is this a stall tactic? And also, did everyone see where Black Lives Matter is taking credit for the release of those hostages? Has anybody read that? So let's take first things first. This idea with the hostages being released a few at a time. I mean, we saw, 2 the other day, and then we saw another 4 today.
Are they Israeli or American?
They were Americans. They had dual. The ones that were released the other day, I believe they were Americans, and I believe the ones that were released today were people living in Israel that had dual citizenship. They were citizens of the United States and of Israel.
So
That
they
has
made
something to do
Aliyah.
with
They
the
made
United
Aliyah.
States.
There were people that made Aliyah to Israel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the question is this a stall tactic on the part of Hamas to, kind of, again, as Rabbi Craig pointed out very poignantly, is that they are very good at propaganda. They are extremely good at propaganda. And is this another piece of the propaganda war? Are they trying to force Israel, force the world to force Israel to pause, before any ground invasion or anything like that? That this is a way to stall them, or to stall things while they rearm, or maybe while they prepare for a ground assault or whatever it is.
Yes,
Israel has no choice this time.
yes, and possibly, because I
Fair
think
enough.
it's a stall for what the reasons you gave, but I think it's also a stall to allow the northern attack of Hezbollah to gain a momentum.
That's a very good point. Now that's something that
In Syria.
we haven't talked about, is that Hezbollah attacking from the north now, and we even seeing what rocket grenades launching in from Syria.
Correct.
And basically, it seems to be an attempt to start a three-front war.
Yeah, it seems to me like
Spread 'em out.
we're working towards 6-Day War Part 2,
Yeah.
except 6-Day War Part 2 in today's world could escalate into World War III very quickly.
Okay, so you brought that up, escalating to World War III. How does that happen, in your opinion?
Okay, real simple. Iran no longer uses fronts. They get involved as Iran, right?
Okay.
Russia sides with them because we side with Israel.
Right.
China, who's been cozying up to Russia, has to this is why I question that comment about they're there in support of Israel. I don't think
That's
so.
what it said today. So I don't know if it's true or not.
I don't think that's true. I believe I have a friend with the State Department who told me that they were actually there on maneuvers that had been planned long before this, that had nothing to do with the war, but they're sticking
Oh, what,
around
China?
because China, yeah, but they're
Well,
sticking around.
China actually runs the port in Tel Aviv, doesn't it?
I
Under
don't know.
contract.
Maybe, I don't know. I don't know about that. I just know
China's interested somewhere else.
Yeah, he said that China was there because of maneuvers they were doing that had nothing to do with this war. But now that they're there, they're going to throw their support for Hamas and against and the Palestinian against Israel, if they need to, only if they need to. So that's
that's
Okay,
the main problem, because
let me get this straight. Okay, so we have the possibility of Iran coming in directly involved in there. We have
Correct.
Russia backing Iran. We have the United States backing Israel.
And we
How does
already
that
have-
actually play out?
and we have 2 warships out there also.
Well, we have 2 battle groups out there,
Battle,
actually.
right.
Yeah.
Okay, so, and if that happens, so now you got Russia, China, the U.S.
you got Third World War.
You have World War III.
Okay, but does it go into active on the ground, boots on the ground stuff, or does it end up being more of a proxy war like we've seen before?
Israel will have no choice. Israel will have somewhere, it's going to be backed into a corner where they're going to have 4 fronts. They will use the nuclear weapons. They have to. Otherwise, there's going to be another show. I don't see it any other way.
Yeah, but I mean, if you have Iran get involved, I mean, again, you can still have this proxy war going on. What actually escalates it to boots on the ground? Or does it actually even get to that point?
I don't know that it does because of I think it'd be a war of drones, missiles, rockets. You know what I mean?
So it'll be munitions, kind of.
A munitions war. Yeah.
Okay, because
Except
I really seriously think that Europe would sit this out.
yeah, I don't
I
know
don't
that
think
Europe would get
Europe has
involved.
any great love for anybody in the Middle East other than themselves, and I think they would just say, well, we've had enough of this. So Marshall
Yeah,
says
I
American
kind of
troops
agree
are
with
being
you.
It
targeted
also
also.
depends what Saudi Arabia is going to do because Qatar and Yemen, you can forget it, they're with the Palestinians.
What did
And
Marshall
Saudi
say?
Arabia is afraid of Yemen and Qatar. So,
Okay. So Adrian put in the chat that, but boy, I wish Adrian was with us. This guy knows so much about this subject. We're going to have Adrian on one of these days. We're just going to have
okay.
to. Adrian says Russia has control of the Syrian naval base at Tartus on the Mediterranean for 40 more years.
Hmm.
Interesting.
It is.
So, yeah, I really don't think it's going to escalate to a world war as many people are thinking that it will.
Do, you have no idea the amount of weapons that Iran has. If they unleash it, they'll destroy Israel. I mean, they say Hezbollah has about 30,000 rockets. What about Iran?
Yeah.
That is
Well,
the
I mean,
problem.
that's where Hezbollah is getting all the rockets from, is Iran.
Correct.
I mean, we know that from the markings on them, Katyusha rockets. Yeah, I mean, I don't see again, I don't think this is going to escalate to what we think a world war is, like we had in World War I or World
If
War
Iran
II.
comes in and Syria is involved, you got four fronts that Israel cannot afford.
Yeah.
It- I was in the 6 Day War, so I know the way things work. I know what Syria can do. Syria to me is nothing. Hezbollah is worse than Syria. Israel can take out Syria anytime. But when you have four fronts and you only have so many soldiers, and
Right.
so many, well, Biden said he's going to give them some planes, which means nothing, if you're going to give some planes, give them 50 or 100 planes,
Well, I mean, if they come in through Syria, I mean, basically, if they can actually make it to the Golan Heights, into that mountain range, I mean, it's a simple 12 miles to the sea
Syria
to
has
cut
the
the
long-range missiles.
to
That's
cut
no
the
problem
cut the country in
reach
half,
Israel.
which is what they've tried to do on numerous occasions. I mean, going back to the War of Independence, cut
That's the
the
hot
country
spot.
in half.
Iran is the hot spot. That's the problem.
Yeah.
And like I said, the use of a nuclear weapon, maybe a low-yield nuclear weapon, has been in the war room in Israel for years because they know,
Yeah.
they're surrounded. They're outnumbered by the number of Arabs in Israel. You see, 20, 30,000 to 1. What are you going to do?
Yeah, Adrian.
Israel going to have no choice sometimes, and I hope it doesn't happen. But if it comes down to survival, they will use it, and I have no doubt.
Yeah, Adrian put in the chat room, Iran has sent drones to Russia for use in Ukraine.
Correct.
Iran has money now from what was released by President Biden.
But wait, at $6 billion, none of that money has been touched. Okay, that money is still sitting in Qatar, so that's not true.
Well,
those $6 billion have not been released.
yeah,
Correct. They're still sitting. They're being managed by Qatar. They're not being released. And just so you know, that money was already theirs. We just haven't given it to them. It was the money we agreed to give them in exchange for the prisoners.
Well, yeah, but I mean, we lifted the oil embargo on them, which is pumped in $50 million a day into their coffers.
Yep. Now that's a different subject.
Yeah,
That's different.
yeah. So I mean,
Okay,
There's so many subjects.
they're well
They
funded.
all agree with you. That money, yes, you're right. But the $6 billion
It's frozen.
is frozen, so
Yeah.
they haven't gotten any of that.
But at this point, do they even need it because they have oil money pouring in now? So,
But they've been
well, yeah, I mean,
they've been
they can
amassing
always
an
use it, but
army and weapons.
You have
For
oil money,
years.
yeah. When you're supplying all these other countries, and building a military or a terrorist, an outlook of terrorist organizations, and supplying missiles and all that, that requires a lot of funding.
Yep.
So yeah, definitely.
Missiles are not cheap.
No. And that's the other
Yeah.
thing that has always bugged me about the PR war that we lose is that, all these young American kids who think that Israel is an apartheid state
yeah,
and they can survive,
Really?
and they don't realize Israel's been sending so much into Gaza every single day, and guess who stops the citizens the Arabs from getting it? Hamas.
right, exactly.
So yeah, Hamas. So Gaza is being occupied right now, and it is being treated as an apartheid, but only by Hamas.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, they actually Arabs in Israel actually have much more freedom than they do in any Arab country.
Speaking of which, did you see that one protest group of? It was called Homos for Hamas or something like that.
Oh, isn't that like chickens for Kentucky Fried Chicken?
Thank you. My buddy at the State Department showed me that, and I was like, let me tell you, tell them I'll donate money to send them I'll buy them one-way tickets to Iran. They're welcome.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we know what happens to them in any Islamic country is, they tend to go flying off a roof.
Or they get beheaded.
Yeah.
Right now, I'm trying to get a lady. She asked me she's trying to get out of Iraq. She is refusing to wear a hijab, and her 3 brothers have beaten her up, have raped her. She's in hiding, and they threaten her. They catch her, they will kill her as an honor killing. So,
Is she asking you for money?
no money.
Okay.
I know, I've known her for years.
Oh, okay. Because I said, be
no
careful.
money. No money. I know she's hiding somewhere outside of Baghdad. She's been hiding for 6 months. She will not even tell me where she is. She's that scared.
Got it.
That's unfortunate,
Rabbi-
but that's the way it is.
Rabbi Y.Y. Jacobs had a piece on on Arut Sheva, which was really interesting. He was talking about these are the things that these kids on college campuses should know, and it was a really good article. It was like the Middle East in a nutshell. Middle East for dummies kind of thing. I'm trying to find it right now. If I can find it, I'll read it for you. But it was
Listen, even Al Jazeera, which is an Arab station, said that bomb was their own. It was not Israel. But we have people in the United States government says, but Al Jazeera is wrong. This is why I said Israel needs to go in and clean up Hamas, because whether they do or they don't, you're still going to be blamed. It's still going to be Israel's fault.
You realize that the Associated Press will not let any of the reporters refer to Hamas as a terrorist organization.
Yeah, I've heard that.
They have to refer to them as militant.
And most people don't know Hamas in the Zohar, the numbers. is
It
108, which is the same number, same
means violent.
amount as the devil.
Yeah, well, Hamas means violence in Hebrew.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
So
Well, I mean, we read it every day starting in before before the High Holy Days, all the way through to Shmi Atzeret. The Psalm 20, what was it that we read every day? That actually has it's in the almost the very last sentence about Hamas,
Yep.
using the term Hamas.
well, in the book of Noah, it says, God destroyed the world because of Hamas.
Yeah.
Aye.
I'm gonna try and find that article by Rabbi Jacobson, because
So
it was,
while
like I said, it was really, really good, and I would read it here if I can find it.
So while you're looking
Okay?
back to Israel and the Arabs and the fact that they want to now have a legitimate state that they call Palestine. How do we handle that? What do you think?
But they don't exist.
Well,
I think
the
it.
United States didn't exist until it did. You know what I'm saying? This was the land occupied by Native Americans, and they were
Tell me
kind of
something.
Arab.
So where is the state going to be? The Palestinian state?
Well, that's what we're discussing. What
Well,
do
I
we
mean, if we go back to the if we go back to the Balfour Declaration, that was supposed to be Jordan.
Correct.
Correct.
That's
But
why the old man
Jordan-
Hussein, he built the
Jordan
Allenby
won't.
Bridge.
Yeah,
He
Jordan
told
won't
to
let him
go.
in.
But let's say it's not going to be Jordan. Do we give them Gaza and say that Gaza? But if we do that,
that's a
You can't.
that's an interesting question because if we go back into ancient times, that strip where Gaza was always considered a cursed land. Nobody wanted it.
correct.
Yeah, so give it to
And
them.
it wasn't part of Israel, like I said, until the 6-Day War. So at the end,
You
Right.
know,
So
but how would
Saudi
we?
Arabia, but no Arab countries wants them.
Okay, so how would it look if we made Gaza Palestine? How we would do that safely?
You can't.
well,
First of all,
it
Okay, let's say okay, so let's say Gaza becomes, let's say it becomes its own country,
And becomes Palestine.
becomes Palestine.
Okay.
Who is going to supply the electric? Who's going to supply the water? Who's going to supply the restructure?
that's the whole thing. If you
Well-
want to create a Palestinian state, number one, you have to get rid of the terrorists. You have to re-educate the whole population, which is going to take at least a couple of generations. And then
you trust
they're
them
going to
to
have to
live
be
the-
self-sufficient and not be a welfare state like they have been.
Correct. But
Okay,
let's pretend like they still get electricity and water from Israel, but under the conditions that they would swear allegiance to Israel in the face of any attack by any other Arab state,
Never
And
going to
they-
happen.
and they would agree to allow Israeli police forces within Gaza to keep security.
Never going to happen.
Well,
Well,
it may not, but
unless
I mean,
Moshiach
that's more of a plan than anybody else has.
I know. So let's hear your plan, Rabbi Ancel. Come on. That's my plan. I'm like looking at this. Do we want to have another 100 years of this war go on? Do we want another 100 years of bombings? Because that's, I mean, first.
Okay, let me ask you another question. Will they accept this, what you're suggesting?
Well, not the terrorists won't, but we have to get rid of the terrorists first. None of this is feasible while they're terrorists. So we
Okay,
have to
so
get
how are
rid
you
of
going to get rid of terrorists?
Well, I thought that's what we're out to do right now, aren't we?
I don't know. So the people in Gaza don't want them, but are you going to be able to know who's who and what's what?
I wouldn't.
Well,
That's why
I mean,
that's why.
yeah, we could have said
would
this.
have to
We
have
could
the
have said the
people from
same thing
Gaza.
about Egypt decades ago.
Exactly. If it was me over there fighting, I'd be shooting everybody. That's why in Vietnam I couldn't tell the difference between a Viet Cong and a Vietnamese. I'm like, they look the same.
You would have to have the people from Gaza point the finger. Who is who?
Okay, so
Yeah.
I did find that article. If you would like me to read it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is Rabbi Y.Y. Jacobson, and you can find him. He has his own website, and you can find him on Arutz Sheva every week. He does a Torah parsha.
He's Simon Jacobson's brother.
Is he really?
Yeah.
Oh,
Rabbi
okay.
Jacobson.
Okay, so the question is, I'm having trouble explaining Israel's actions in Gaza to my friends and family, even after the barbaric massacre on October 7th. They are accusing me of whitewashing ethnic cleansing and wanton murder and claim Israel's actions brought it on themselves. Hear that a lot. Can you answer some of the questions posed? Absolutely. I wish everyone would familiarize themselves with the facts, not the myths, so that we can become an ambassador for truth and peace. So the next question is why can't Israel show restraint and not bomb Gaza, especially when they have Iron Dome to intercept most rockets? His answer is, imagine you are sitting in your home with your children and someone would begin shooting bullets into your home, killing one of your children, wounding another, and murdering an 85-year-old Holocaust survivor. Do you think the correct thing is to show restraint and allow all your children to die, or should you stop the killers? Hamas has sent more than 3,000 rockets raining down on Israeli cities with the singular intention of murdering as many Jews as possible. Should Israel just say, send some more? We are fine if Jews die, or should Israel try to crush the terrorists? If not for Iron Dome, Israel would have been reduced to rubble and thousands would have been killed. Even with Iron Dome, which isn't 100%, there are gruesome casualties and millions of Israelis are living in dread. When the siren goes off in the middle of the night, they have 10 seconds to rush all their children into a shelter. Should Israel accept this? Next question. Instead of firing back at Hamas, why does Israel not concede to Hamas's demands so they would stop firing rockets? Hamas openly calls and aims for the death of every Jew in Israel, as clearly stated in their charter, which you can read online. Should Israel concede to this demand? Should we murder every Jew in Israel and then there will be no more rockets? Hamas and Islamic Jihad are genocidal terrorist organizations that want to wipe Israel, a country the size of New Jersey, with 6.6 million Jewish residents, off the map. Last week, a senior Hamas official sent out a video clip asking Palestinians to go out and buy 5 shekel knives to chop off Jewish heads. Next question. Why do you say it is about genocide? Maybe it is just about occupation. Israel is occupying Gaza and has created a blockade around it. So in desperation, the Gazans need to shoot rockets to fight the injustice. The answer, I believe Hamas. They stated clearly that in their charter that all their messages and goals here are to eradicate the Jewish people. That is the core obstacle to peace. If someone just hates Jews and Israel with no rationale, there is little to be said in defense of truth. But if someone is looking for some truth, here it is. In August of 2005, Israel expelled 10,000 Jews from their homes in Gaza, their communities demolished by the Israeli Defense Forces. Not a single Jew of Israel, Jew or Israeli soldier was left in Gaza. Israel gave its Arab neighbors the opportunity to create an independent Palestinian state in Gaza with a flourishing society. The infrastructure was already there, and the factories were already there. The Singapore of the Middle East, for example. It left hothouses purchased for millions that had exported flowers to Europe, but the Palestinian Arabs destroyed them deliberately. Alas, the day following the forced Jewish expulsion, rockets came pouring down on Israeli citizens, targeting civilians and homes and in the streets. Instead of waking up to the deadly consequence of the Gaza withdrawal and re-entering Gaza, Israel showed restraint. The result? Hamas built a terror state. Since then, tens of thousands of rockets were sent from Gaza to murder as many civilian Jews as possible. The blockade Israel created is not to block any essentials, only to stop weaponry from being smuggled into Gaza to be used against Jews in Israel. Had Gaza been a neighbor to Israel like Canada is to the United States, Israel would not even look at what's going into Gaza. But when they have a neighbor who wants all your children to die, should you not inspect what goes into the country? The blockade is not the reason for the rockets. The rockets are the reason for the blockade. Besides, Israel allows more than enough food, goods, and services to enter Gaza. It just checks and inspects the contents. There are beautiful and wealthy neighborhoods, beaches, and shopping areas in Gaza. Luxurious villas owned by terrorist leaders. Gaza's rulers do not publicize this because that highlights the fact that they are the upper class of Palestinian Arabs and ignore the masses living in poverty. And then there's a whole article about the rich and the poor gap. Next question. Why not just withdraw to the pre-1967 line, create a Palestinian state, and all will be fine? Yeah. Israel did just that with Gaza. When Gaza was the first Palestinian state created back in 2005, it became the center of terror. It became instantly clear that the demand for the Palestinian state was not to live side by side with Israel, but to replace Israel. One can only shudder to think what would happen if a Palestinian state would be created in the heart of Israeli society. Do you think Israel should commit national suicide? Following the Oslo Accords, which they violated within days, when the Israeli gave autonomy to the Palestinians in the so-called West Bank, Israel saw the worst terror attacks against its citizens. Conceding territory, sadly, is an invitation for war, not peace. How can Israel justify killing civilians if their intent is to destroy Hamas? Here's a good one. The death of every innocent human being is horrific. But what is the reason for all these tragic casualties? Because Hamas places its fighters among the civilian population and launches its rockets from schools, hospitals, and homes, and mosques. The Palestinian people are being held hostage by Hamas. A civilian who is killed while being used by the terrorists as a human shield is a victim of the terrorists, not the Israeli army, who does not target innocent civilians. Why does Hamas do this? Because it knows that the world will blame Israel instead of Hamas. Hamas knows that so many in the West will buy into their sadistic and cynical tactic of making sure that as many children as possible are killed in Gaza. Do you know that 1/3 of all rockets shot into Israel does not make it into Israel? It lands into northern Gaza. Israel does everything to minimize casualty, not only of its own people, but of Gazans. Hamas does everything to increase casualties, not only of Israelis, but of their own children. And the world lets them get away with it. If Hamas would not be shooting rockets into Israel, would even one child in Gaza die? Never. So why blaming Israel for the deaths caused by Hamas? Many German civilians died during World War II. Who do we blame for their deaths, Hitler or Churchill? What Nazi Germany was to England, Hamas is to Israel, literally. But the next question, Israel is shooting rockets into Gaza and killing these innocent people. If someone declared a war on your country and it is waging war from amidst its civilian population, do you try to defeat your enemy, or do you just allow the people to die? Still, there has never been an army in the history of warfare that had tried so hard to minimize civilian casualties the way Israel does. Sadly, they are not always successful due to the deliberate and criminal aim of Hamas to ensure the greatest number of deaths of their own children, of which they can blame Israel. Consider the following fact. Before bombing a residential building used to launch rockets against Israel, the Israeli military phones the residents, warning them to leave, even though this gives ample time for the terrorists to flee as well. Does anyone expect Hamas to phone Israeli residents before sending a rocket into their homes? What does it tell you about the difference between Hamas and Israel? One is trying to murder as many innocent people as possible, and the other is trying to protect as many innocent people as possible. If you really care about the safety and future of Palestinian children, you should embrace Israel and combat Hamas. If only Hamas would love its own children a little more than they hate Israeli children, there would be peace. Many more deaths have been reported from Gaza than from Israel. Clearly, Israel is the more dangerous aggressor. During the Second World War, there were millions more civilian deaths in Germany than in Britain. Does that make England wrong or the Nazis right? Question. Still, isn't Israel's response disproportionate? I love that, the way they throw that term around, disproportionate, when they don't even understand what it means by treaty. Okay. It still isn't Israel's response disproportionate? Can't they show more restraint? What would be your reaction if in 1945 politicians would urge the U.S. and England to show restraint? Hitler began the war, and the Allies were trying to end it by defeating the enemy. Hamas declared war against Israel, and Israel is trying to end it. What are you trying? When you're trying to end a war, you try to end it as swiftly as you can. Remember, if Hamas would not shoot rockets, this war would never have begun. The San Remo conference is basically where the whole proportional response is called out. Question: Israel has the Iron Dome to protect it from Hamas rockets, while the Gazans are left without protection from Israeli rockets. The answer: the people of Gaza have something far more effective than Iron Dome, a neighbor who would never shoot even a single rocket at them. If Hamas ceases to terrorize Israel, all of Gaza will be safe. Sadly, it is only Israel that needs an Iron Dome because Hamas seeks to destroy it. Doesn't Israel understand that they are creating more terrorists? The fury at Israel as a result of bombing Gaza will make more people want to join Hamas. Feelings of frustration and rage do not make you into a terrorist. A culture of death and education of hate does. Israel doesn't need to do anything to create terrorists. Islamic extremism does that. But Israel must act to destroy those who threaten its people. Let's see how much more we got on this article. It's actually a substantial article. Anyway, let me, I'm going to put this link in the chat room. So anybody who wants to finish reading that or send it on to anybody else can do so. And because we're coming up on the end of our time, and I want to give...
He stole a quote from Golda Meir.
Yes, he did. Absolutely. One, if they loved their children more than they hated us, then there would be peace. Yeah.
That was Golda Meir.
That's what she said.
That's exactly it. Yeah. Yeah. Golda Meir had a lot of good sayings. I have to give her that.
So did Begin.
Yeah, Begin did too. So we got to tie this up. We got like 7 minutes to tie this up. So,
You know, from the thing that you read, you know, the Hamas leaders don't live in Gaza. Hamas leaders, they live in Qatar and in Yemen.
You know,
The chief of Hamas lives in Yemen,
I saw
or
today,
I'm sorry, in Qatar.
I saw today that the U.S. government has offered $10 million, up to $10 million reward for information on where the deputy, I think it's the deputy commander of Hamas, where he is, because obviously he isn't in Gaza.
Nor is the chief of Hamas. He lives in Qatar.
Yeah.
The only one that lives there in Gaza is the president of what's his name, Abbas.
Abbas, the Palestinian, whatever they're called.
So, in closing, let's start with Rabbi Craig. In closing, what do you have to say?
In closing, it's obvious that there is no easy solution. Okay. However, it's not going to go away until we reach some, you know, the solution is to wipe everybody out. And I don't see that happening.
Yeah.
Okay. You know, yes, you know, there are innocent people in Palestine or in Gaza, I mean. Innocent people get killed in wars. And as you pointed out in that article, which I've been pointing out on Facebook, you know, for several years, you know, the terrorist organizations are very quick they don't care about those people.
That's right.
They don't care about them at all. All those people are to them is a public relations opportunity to achieve their greater good of their goal, which is to kill all Jews and put an end to the state of Israel.
Correct.
Anytime they can use those people for a photo op, they do. Anytime, you know, it's like even the rocket into the hospital or the rocket on the road, which is theirs.
Yes.
You know, everybody was so quick to blame Israel.
Yeah, yeah. When it
look,
wasn't even the
always gonna be
hospital
like
that got
that.
hit, it was a parking lot, and only 50 people got killed. And Hamas says it hit the hospital, and there was over 600 killed.
Well, that's the other thing. You know, and Americans see, but you can't blame Americans because they're really stupid. You have to understand when news comes out of there, when they say, well, a UN health official has determined that UN health official is a Hamas affiliate or
Yes,
Hamas
absolutely.
soldier.
People don't
When a
understand
news-
that.
When a news report says this, that's Hamas news. Nothing comes out of there that isn't Hamas okayed.
Yep.
Hamas runs that country. The sad part is that, you know, the people there put them in charge back in 2005, which was the last time they had a legitimate election. And now they obviously some regret what happened by putting them in charge, because now Hamas has taken over and simply uses them as pawns in this war that they're waging.
One of the solutions would be if the people of Gaza would rebel against Hamas
Yeah.
and give them up to Israel or whatever, or the world court or whatever, that would be one of the solutions. Then there would be peace, because I believe that most people in Gaza don't want war.
No, but I think they're afraid of Hamas.
Of course,
Well,
they're
you
afraid
know,
of them. This is what I'm saying. If they
that's-
would turn against them.
Yeah,
there's
yeah.
2
I mean,
million
that's
of them.
you can only.
Hamas doesn't have more than 10,000, 5,000, 10,000.
Hamas has
Well-
45,000 members.
Okay, 45,000 members compared
Yeah.
to
Gaza?
what? 2.5 million. 2 point.
No, there are
Some-
2 point something million people,
Okay.
and that counts the members of Hamas.
Okay. So I
Of
mean,
that 2 million,
well,
wait,
let
of that
me-
2
let me get
million,
my
1
point.
million are children. 1 million of those 2 million are children. Remember that, 50%.
okay.
So that leaves a million. Of that million, 50% are the elderly and women. So there you go. They represent like 10% of the able-bodied men population.
Well,
no
let's
peace.
again. Let's go back to history and let's look at other fascist governments. I mean, the longest one that ever lasted would basically be Russia. The old USSR, and it fell apart. What happened to Franco in Spain? I mean, and around the world we see fascist governments. They don't they don't tend to last.
Cuba.
They don't tend to last that long because eventually the people get fed up with it and they turn against the government. So we shall see. Okay, I'm going to turn you down and I'm going to sign out. Please stay on, and I'll get back with you in just a moment.
Thank everybody in the
Thank you.
chat room for contributing and participating. Muddy Acres, yeah, prayer. It's always good.
Okay, I want to thank everyone in the chat room tonight. Adrian, what you put in there was great. I'm very glad you were in here. We're definitely going to have you on one of these days. I want to thank our guests, of course, our regular guest, Rabbi Ancel, Salamon, and our special guest this evening, Rabbi Craig Wyckoff. I want to remind you that tomorrow night is the Torah study with myself and Rabbi Ancel. This week's Torah Parsha is Lech Lecha. Friday evening at 8 p.m., all times are Eastern. 8 p.m. is Kabbalat and Ma'ariv Shabbat service. Shabbat morning at 10 a.m. is Shacharit and Musaf Shabbat service. And back here on Monday for Zeta's Story Corner. And right back here again next Tuesday for the Rabbis Discuss. Whatever it is the rabbis are going to discuss. I want to thank everybody for being here tonight. Until the next time, everyone, we'll simply say, Laila Tov.